Welcome to Lunar Module 2. It's just a phase. The moon appears to change shape, but it doesn't. What we see are called phases of the moon, and we're just seeing how much of the sun's light is being reflected on the moon. The moon follows an orbital path around the Earth that takes 27.3 days. A lot of people just round it off to 30, they just consider it that. But it's got a path that goes around like that. Now, when the moon is almost directly between the Earth and the sun, no light is reflected onto the moon. So the moon looks dark to us on the Earth. So I'm going to place the new moon here. But as the moon continues on its orbital or its path, a bit of the sunlit side of the moon shows. It forms the shape of a crescent. Because the moon is growing brighter, this is called the waxing crescent. So it kind of looks like this. And it takes a few days for it to get to that stage. And you'll start to see it's like a little tiny sliver, then it gets bigger and bigger and bigger. The next phase that it goes through is called the half moon or the first quarter moon. It's a little confusing. How can it be a half a moon or a quarter of a moon at the same time? But you'll see when I put it up here, some people call it a half moon because half of the moon is lit up. Half of the moon is reflecting light from the sun. It's called a quarter of the moon officially because it's now 1/4 of its way around the Earth, or a quarter of the way around the Earth. Next, you get to what's called a gibbous moon. Okay, so the gibbous is almost, in my mind, the opposite of the crescent moon. A few days later, it's going to end up here, and you'll see almost all of the surface is starting to get reflected light. And then finally, a few days later, you end up getting a full moon, where you can see the entire near side of the moon is reflecting light. Then the process goes in reverse. So this has all been waxing or growing. So this side has been waxing and getting more and more and more light until you get to the full moon. But then it starts waning or getting smaller and smaller and smaller. So you have a waning gibbous moon. That's actually what it looked like this morning to me. We had a waning gibbous moon happening. You can also have a waning quarter moon or half moon. Some people call that the last quarter because now we're at the last quarter of our orbit around the Earth. And finally, you can have a waning crescent moon. So after 27.3 days, the moon returns to the new moon phase and it starts all over again. And it just is on a continuous orbital path around the Earth. If you're choosing to document your work for the Lunar Module Project, your goal will be to track the progress of the moon for 1 month. You'll need to include the date, the time of moonrise, the time of moonset, and a sketch of what you see each evening or morning. If it's rainy or cloudy, you can record that. I'll show you an example of how I took care of this. So I have my same composition notebook that I had last time, and I took my lid and I traced the shape of a moon. Now, obviously, it's not going to be a full moon every time, but you'll see how I handled this. I recorded what the day was. This was day 1 of my project, was September 1st. I put in the moonrise, which happened to be 7:42 p.m. The moon came up, and I put the moon set at 5:47. And just like the sun, the moon rises in the east and sets in the west. So that's the direction you'll need to be looking for it. Sometimes it's tricky if you have a lot of trees and you might have to wait until after moonrise. Like at my house, I have so many trees, I have to wait until about 3 hours after moonrise to be able to see the actual moon if I'm staying at my house. I drew the moon, and then day one of my project, it was raining and there was heavy cloud coverage, so I just made note of that there. I couldn't draw anything. On day two, I could record all the pertinent information like the moonrise and the moonset and the date, but it was heavy clouds again and I couldn't see a thing. Finally, on day three, I was able to record what I was seeing. So I just drew a picture of what I could make out with the bare eye. I didn't use binoculars or a telescope. I just sort of saw some blobby dark spots and I recorded as best I could what I was seeing. And then this part of the moon I wasn't seeing very well, so I filled it in black because the sunlight wasn't reflecting on that part as well. So if you are now ready to go forth and do that, then 3, 2, 1, lift off.